Welcome to Dear Husband, Dear Wife with Danny and Jenny Fuentes, a podcast about dating, marriage, and sex, where we break it down, keep it real, and unashamedly go there. Our goal is to foster a space that welcomes you to have conversations with us regarding these topics. And since we believe in seeking the truth about these topics, we guarantee to keep a biblical perspective in all things related. So go ahead and grab your favorite drink and or put those earbuds because it's about to get real.
Welcome to episode numero one.
Oh no.
Episode one.
Welcome to Dear Husband, Dear Wife with Danny and Jenny Fuentes.
Yes. Yeah. The fountains. So this episode, we're going to talk about we're going to go back to the beginning of, just our personal lives as individuals and some of the things that we experienced growing up and how that plays a role in our lives today. I think this applies to everyone, regardless of who you are, where you're from, and how old you are. The environment that you've been in, the friendships that you've obtained, the relationships that you've been through and have, if you have any right now, they all play a role. Everything plays a role. Who we are today is molded and shaped by the things that we've experienced in our past. And so I feel that all of this is connected to some extent. Obviously, because we're human, there's a lot of baggage that we all carry as individuals. And unfortunately, a lot of us don't realize that we carry a lot of this stuff into our current lives today. And it is one of the reasons as to why certain relationships don't work, or we find ourselves asking the big question, why do I keep losing people that I love or whatever?
Yes, we definitely want to go ahead and just kind of give you a glimpse of where we grew up or even our perspective in relationships before we met. So this is a little bit of a glimpse inviting you into our story on how we were shaped, our home environment shaped our perspective regarding relationships. So grab a drink, go ahead and relax. If you are on a walk, continue to do your walk. If you're working out, thank you so much for inviting us into your workout. But we are here to share. And so to kick it off, I'm going to have Danny go ahead and start us off.
Yes. So I was an average kid growing up. I wasn't rich. Nothing was handed to me on a silver platter. Average parents. My childhood was kind of intense in regard to discipline. So growing up, I always felt like I wasn't good enough. I couldn't perform to the expectations. And so I had a lot of identity issues as a kid growing up because, again, I always felt like, everyone else was always more important or, had something to offer. And so I always felt like there was something missing and, I needed to find what that X factor was to feel complete. So the friends that I had growing up were definitely not the right kind of friends I should have had. And relationships that I got mixed in were definitely not the kind that I should have gotten into. I will admit, again, this is an episode that we want to be very transparent and authentic with. So at a very, very young age, I was exposed to pornography. And I can tell you that I was very, very young because till this day, I actually remember the first time I ejaculated.
How old were you?
I think I was like 11 years old, and I remember it was in some lady used to give me a ride after school, from school to the house, and so there were a bunch of other kids that this woman would give a ride to as well. And this one day, I was the only one that she gave a ride to. There was nobody else, and so that was the first time I ejaculated in the back of her van. And I was scared to death because I was like, holy crap, I'm dying. Something's coming out of my body and I don't know what it is. But I was exposed to pornography at a young age. I didn't know what it was, to be honest with you. I had never seen a pornographical image prior to that moment. So when I saw this image, and this was way before YouTube, way before the internet exploded and smartphones and things like that. So my definition of access to pornography was literally physical. You had to have physical magazines. You couldn't get it anywhere else unless you had a computer at home and and access to internet. But I think back then it was all what, DSL, so you had to have like a separate
You had to ring ding, ding,
phone
ding,
line
ding.
and you connect it to your computer, and then you had to find like an open line or something like that.
We are in our mid-30s, by the way, side note.
Yes, I'm in 30, so but again, this was, at a very, very young age. So when my friend showed me this magazine, I was very confused because the thought came to my mind like, oh, is this what women have? Like, is that what they look like under their clothes? And I seriously asked myself that question because again, I never saw a naked woman ever. So I remember the first thing that my eyes locked in on were, the woman's chest, and so I was like, "Oh, is that what they like? Is that what they are?" Like, so I was very confused, and honestly, I was very at the same time intrigued and curious because I was like, "Whoa, this is like something out of the ordinary. You don't see this every day, and that's what that looks like." And so after that moment, everything completely changed, and I mean everything. My parents were not the kind of people to sit and talk to me about love and respect and how you treat a woman and what you can and cannot do. I never had that conversation. I grew up, in the church. My mom accepted Christ when I was very, very little, and so started going to church. But obviously, as a kid growing up, when you go to church, you're just going to church because you know people, and that's it. It's very rare if you find a child that goes to church because he wants to seek the Lord. But no, I did not have any concern for the Lord. I was a kid and there was nothing else I could do about it. So I was at church all the time. Um, and so again, my parents never really had that kind of approach with us. I don't know if it was because they just feared that if they talked to me that I would even, I would become more curious. I wasn't sure. I didn't know why, but this was something that they just never talked about. And so growing up in the church, you learn about things that you can and cannot do. And, you don't listen to secular music, you don't curse, you don't treat people bad, and definitely don't have sex before marriage, and you don't do drugs, and you don't drink, and basically a lot of do's and don'ts. And so that was my upbringing, my at least for me, my brothers, and my mom. Sorry, for me and my brothers. My dad wasn't much into church. He did at some point go to church. He accepted the Lord, but then he stopped. And I think it was just something that took place in his life that he was probably not okay with, and or maybe scared to make a decision. And so he just kind of backed away, and that was that. Um, but for me and my brothers, church was practically all of our lives. And so, when I started to like really fall into the addiction of pornography, it was completely out of control. Completely out of control. I was doing pornography like on a regular basis. And again, this was like before, the internet like really exploded. So I would find it on TV if I could. I remember at some point, I started asking my friend for like magazines, and I would hide them at home. And I remember at one point, my mom actually found those magazines, and I thought, "Oh my God, I'm gonna die! Like I'm gonna die." So she found them, and she really didn't get upset. She just looked very concerned and just told me that you know to not do it because it was wrong, and I think she just threw away the magazines. And so again, it was just something like, oh, okay, I didn't get scolded for it. So I was like, well, I guess, we continue. But that was the case. Like kept looking at pornography and got really, really deep into it to the point where it just completely changed my entire perspective on women. I thought that that's what women liked. I thought that that's what girls wanted. And when it came down to, someone having feelings for me, I saw that as a sexual opportunity. Like my mind instantly went into, I'm going to bang this chick. Simple as that. She likes me, I'm in her pants, I'm good. And it completely distorted everything because that's all I thought about. That's all I thought, that's all I wanted. I couldn't stop thinking about porn. I couldn't stop thinking about sex. And it trickled into church. Like I started looking at girls at church sexually. I started fantasizing about them sexually, and then it started to grow to the point where I started to like fantasize, older women sexually. If I thought that an older woman was very attractive, then that was it. In my mind, she was being degraded. Period. And so it affected a lot. It affected a lot. It was almost impossible for me to have an experience in my life where I had feelings for the opposite sex and that was it. And again, I never had the conversation of like, hey, what do I do if I like this girl? Like, how do I go about that? Do I like bury it and never talk about it? Or do I, constantly, run to something that makes my life more busy so that I don't think about those feelings? I never had that conversation. So because I never had that conversation, I didn't know what to do. So I just figured I just run with it. And because everything that I learned about relationship and girls and sex all came from pornography, I instantly connected it to pornography. So if a girl liked me, in my mind, I was going to have sex at some point. The question was not, will I have sex? The question was, how am I going to have sex? How am I going to get to that point?
Mm.
And so that's where, it changed who I was and as a person growing up. And I started to become very manipulative and, I started to, become a very, very like big, flirt. And I started saying things that girls wanted to hear. I started acting in ways that girls wanted me to. I basically gave them what they wanted and it worked. It honestly did. But, if I could show you all the lives that I've ruined and destroyed and have damaged, it would be probably very, very sad to see that. But that was my staple. That was my life. I really didn't have a normal childhood. It was completely, taken from me because of pornography. And till this day, I'm 34 years old and it still affects me. I've been fighting this for such a long time that most times I ask myself if it's worth the fight still because it's very exhausting. And mind you, my wife and I live in Santa Barbara, where every summer it's like almost every Caucasian girl out here calls each other
Any girl.
and just like, hey, are we gonna wear the most provocative thing we can because it's somewhat hot? And everyone walks outside wearing, revealing clothes, and I'm like, crap, you know. So it's very difficult. It's very difficult. I don't, I just wake up every day. I go to work. I keep my head down, and I come home. And it's again, it's a thought in the back of my mind that constantly like picks at me, and again, it's a battle. But thankfully enough, I have someone in my life that cares for me and fights for me and prays for me and sees the best in me, even though I can't see it in myself. And so she's a constant reminder that I am not what I grew up as. I am not pornography. I am not a perverted guy. That's not what I was made to do. That's not what God intended for me, but that I was made to be loved, to experience first and foremost the love of God, and also to experience true love the way God intended it to be whole, pure, kind, sincere, not perverted and disgusting like those images that I exposed myself to. But that's what God desires for me. And so I'm grateful that today I have someone that's with me, that stands by my side and fights with me as well.
Yeah, and I think it's so important to actually remind anyone who's listening, whether it be a man or a woman, a young man, pornography has affected so many individuals. You don't necessarily have to be a man to be addicted to pornography. We know a couple of young women who have been addicted to pornography and how that has affected them. And I don't know if it's cultural, but just like Danny was previously saying, we really didn't talk about these things at home. We really didn't much when it came to these things at home. And so it wasn't until I don't know. I mean, for me, it was different. I guess if anything, it was definitely I was not exposed to pornography by the grace of God. I definitely did not have many issues as what my husband would say, but what I was exposed to was definitely an unhealthy home environment. I love my parents to death. I really do. I would do anything for them, and my husband can echo that and confirm that. But unfortunately, my parents, just like probably many of us too, they're flawed. They're human. We're all human. We're all flawed, and made and created so many mistakes that I got to witness in their marriage. And from verbal abuse, physical abuse, to emotional abuse. And for me, I thought that was the norm. I thought that was supposed to be something that was normal. So if a guy was respectful, if a guy was kind and gentle, if a guy gave me an opportunity to speak up, I thought that was weird. I thought that was definitely um, not the norm. That guy must be someone who probably wasn't relationship quality because I needed a man who was more of a machista. That's the word that we use in the Latino culture. Or a man who didn't allow me to speak up. And I had to be this housewife. And that was my mentality growing up, I would say, until probably my teens. And then when I hit 13, something shifted in me. I actually gave my life to Jesus at that age. I actually got baptized at that time. And then I started really, really just devoting my life to wanting to explore the love of God and what God really intended for my life. And it was in that age that I realized that love was not verbally abusive. Love was not physically abusive, but love was gentle. It was kind. It was true. It was all about peacemaking and not constantly having to fight or argue. That love was something that you would endure. And so, and the best love, the best model to love was God. And so I did what an abnormal young lady would do. And that is, I started praying for my husband. And I'm an avid journal writer. My husband always gives me crap for buying a bunch of journals. And so I definitely, at the age of 13, I just started journaling and I started definitely writing to God about what I wanted to find in a husband. So, yeah, in that list, I definitely had, oh, I want a musician, or I thought I was going to marry a guy with green eyes and light skinned. Nope, I ended up marrying the brownest guy in here with the black hair and brown eyes. But other than that, I just started speaking life over my future husband. And I didn't date through high school. I wanted to. I had major crushes on guys, But by the grace of God, it just never happened for me. And I was teased a lot. In fact, I was called Virgin Lips and Virgin Mary because I just didn't want to kiss any other guy. I just didn't want to be in relationships with any random guy. And I just made a promise and a vow to myself and to God that I wanted to wait till I found the man that I was going to marry. And so little did I know that those prayers were going to come into effect later on in my life. So I know that I wanted to definitely wait, and I wanted to definitely allow God to guide me to the guy who was going to be my husband. And my perspective about marriage shifted, as I said, in my teens. I did have a dad who really raised us to be independent. We're three girls that, with my dad, we're five in general. Like my mom had two previous relationships, so I have two older siblings. But I'm the oldest from my dad's daughters, and I am the middle child from my my four siblings. So that also kind of shaped in a way who I became and what I thought about people and relationships and men. And so for me, it was just the idea that I wanted what God had envisioned for me. And so that was my intentionality behind it. It's definitely different. We're definitely completely the opposite, I would say. Our stories are so one radical spectrum to the other. You have a
Yeah.
guy who's definitely exposed to pornography. His drive is pornography at the beginning,
Hmm.
and that's his relationship before we met. And
Yeah.
then you have me, the young girl, the little girl who grew up in a very traumatic home environment, but who, by the grace of God, I would just say it, um, was praying for her husband at the age of 13. So that was definitely interesting. And that kind of influenced a lot our relationship at the beginning when we first met in 2005. Mind you, there was a lot of wounds that I had not dealt with yet, and a lot of insecurities, and a lot of doubts that I had regarding relationships, even regarding myself, my image, and whatnot. So, those things definitely did impact the way that I carried myself in the first couple of years of our relationship. And then you have a young man addicted to pornography falling for a girl who definitely has made it very clear that she has not had a boyfriend and that she wants to wait and that she really has never been kissed and that she really wants to, you know, do things right. And boy, oh boy, did that really affect us. Little did we know that the enemy was going to utilize both of us to destroy us. But I love what the word of God says, that whatever the enemy has intended for evil, he will intend it for good for those who love him. And though it was initially intended to destroy us, we are here now, and we are a testimony of the grace of God and what God does when we allow healing to happen. So, this is our story, the beginning of our story. This is before we met. In our next episode, we can't wait to share with you how we met and a little bit more of how that influenced. And just so you know, we want to share our story first so that you understand where we are coming from when we start tapping into topics such as porn, such as family trauma, such as sex, such as marriage, such as engagement and dating.
Yeah. I hope that you guys, again, just come at this with an open heart. We're not here to tell you what to do. Definitely not here to shame you or make you feel less than what you are. The sole purpose of this podcast is just for us to share what we've been through. The hurt, the pain, the experiences that we've encountered in our personal lives, and how at the same time a lot of churches today are afraid to talk about it because of whatever reason. But someone has to do it. Some people are brave enough to talk about it and others are not. So we are using this platform to go about it. So we just want you guys to know that we are here for you. We're not here to condemn you. We're not here to judge you. If you are going through a lot of these things that we just talked about in this first episode, we want you to know that there is hope.
Yeah.
This is not the end. This is not how your story finishes.
Nope.
You're not just going to close that book and God's going to forget about you. That's not how it works. You were created by the Lord for the sole purpose of serving Him to the fullest of your capacity and more. And so you have a story to tell. You have a story to share. And so we just hope and we pray that you guys would join us and that you would walk beside us as well, that we would partner together and stand for what the Lord intended, for love to be pure, to change things around, to not continue to allow this world to just make it worse, but for us to take a stand and say, we're not going to do this anymore. We're not going to let this happen anymore. And to be that change. So thank you guys for listening. I hope that this was encouraging, and we'll definitely catch you guys on the next episode.
Absolutely. You guys have a wonderful, wonderful day or night. And thank you again for listening. Adios.
Peace out.
Thank you for tuning in. We really enjoyed hanging out with you. If you really enjoyed hanging out with us too, then we ask you for one simple favor. Go ahead and leave us a review and let us know how we did. We thank you so much and we really appreciate your time. We look forward to seeing you next week. Adios.